coming to you from Haddonfield, the town that has banned Halloween since 1989.
Seems to me you're just plain scared.
Yes. Yeah, I am. I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left. No conscience, no understanding, and even the most rudimentary sense of life or death. The blackest eyes. The devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up. Samhain. It means the Lord of the Dead. The end of summer. The festival of Samhain.
17-year-old Laurie Strode was your typical high school babysitter, but on Halloween night in 1978, her life would become anything but typical. Laurie would become the target of one of America's most notorious serial killers. Unbeknownst to Laurie and her friends, the Boogey Man was stalking their every move. By morning, 3 teenagers would be dead, and the town of Haddonfield would forever be changed by the events of that Halloween. What would you do if the Boogey Man came for you? This is Dead in Hollywood, the Stalking of Laurie Strode. Let's go behind the sign. Today, Haddonfield is a thriving community in Warren County, Illinois, located around 100 miles south of Chicago. Over the years, the name Haddonfield has become synonymous with the grisly Babysitter Murders of 1978 and the infamous serial killer who carried out those vicious attacks. It didn't help matters when documentarian John Carpenter released his documentary on the Babysitter Murders titled Halloween. Many viewed the reenactments in bad taste, especially so soon after the murders. It's worth noting that Jamie Lee Curtis played Laurie Strode in the reenactments. Curtis bears a striking resemblance to the real-life Laurie Strode. All over town, a cottage industry has sprung up around the murders. Shop for Babysitter Murders cutlery at Haddonfield's Farmers Market. Visit the Babysitter Murders exhibit at the Haddonfield Historical Society. Or take a tour of the homes where the murders took place on any of the tour vans that drive past every hour on the hour, much to the anger of neighbors who lived there at the time and knew the victims.
They're so disgusting.
In 1989, the city council banned Halloween due to not only the murders, but the unwanted press that descended on the small Midwest town every Halloween.
Michael Myers is long gone. There is no Boogey Man.
Coming up on Noon Tonight, Halloween canceled.
I mean, it's such a part of American culture, and it would be a terrible thing to remember the year that there was no Halloween.
I feel sad that I don't get to share my costume with my friends.
Oh, there was a marvelous celebration, and they dressed up in costumes, hoping to ward off the evil spirits, especially the Boogeyman.
On October 31st, 1963, Michael Myers would commit his first murder in this house. On a cold Halloween night, while his parents were away, Myers' 16-year-old sister Judith, who was supposed to be babysitting the 6-year-old, was instead messing around with her boyfriend Danny.
Take off that thing. Michael's around someplace.
Let's go upstairs.
Okay.
Myers watched the amorous couple through the window, stalking them like prey as he circled the house. The couple disappeared upstairs. Myers, dressed as a clown, entered the kitchen and picked up a butcher knife. When Danny left, Myers crept upstairs and stabbed his sister to death in her bedroom as she brushed her hair. After killing his sister, he quietly came downstairs, out the front door, down these front steps, and he stood right about here with the bloody butcher knife. And he just waited for his parents to come home. Right? Standing right here, it sends a shiver down my spine. It's weird to think this is where it all started. Myers would wait another 15 years before committing his next murder.
The driveway's a few hundred yards up on the right.
I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left. No reason, no conscience, no understanding, and even the most rudimentary sense of life or death, of good or evil, right or wrong. I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
Shortly after killing his sister, Myers was sent away to Smith's Grove Sanitarium. It was here he became a patient of Dr. Samuel Loomis. Loomis spent 15 years with Myers, who barely moved and never spoke a word. Loomis insisted that his patient's blank behavior was an ingenious cover for his true nature. Doctors brushed off Loomis's warning, declaring that Myers was a catatonic, exhibiting comatose behavior. When Myers turned 21 on October 19, 1978, he was set to be transferred back to Haddonfield to stand trial for his sister's murder.
Michael Audrey Myers shall be brought before the court on the day of his 21st birthday, where he shall be tried as an adult for the murder of his sister, Judith Margaret Myers.
Dr. Loomis, Michael Myers is the most dangerous patient I have ever observed.
Dr. Loomis, accompanied by Nurse Marion Chambers, was charged with transferring Myers. The transfer did not go as planned. And then I'm going to pull up next to it. On October 30th, 1978, Michael Myers escaped from Smith's Grove after destroying his room and releasing the other patients from their rooms. In all the confusion, he stole Dr. Loomis's car and attacked his nurse, Marion Chambers. And on the night Myers escaped, it was pouring down rain, and after he let the patients out of their rooms, they came down here, out these gates and onto this lawn over here, and they were just wandering around. They looked like zombies. It was a terrifying sight. And Dr. Loomis and his nurse, Marion Chambers, pull up, and they see this and have absolutely no idea what's going on. Loomis gets out of the car and goes over here to the call box to radio the actual institute up the road, and that's when Myers attacks Nurse Marion Chambers in her car, and then he drives off. Crazy that he knew how to drive.
He was doing very well last night.
Some of the residents believe that even though Smith's Grove's abandoned, that there are still some former patients lurking around the property. Smith's Grove was eventually shut down due to cutbacks, and all that remains is this creepy old sign from back in the day. Dr. Loomis knew Myers better than anyone, and he knew Myers was going home, but no one would listen.
I've been here and there, a goddamn place.
He's gone from here.
How was it?
The evil is gone.
Halfway between Smith's Grove and Haddonfield, Myers killed a truck driver and stole the man's overalls. The overalls have become as iconic as John Wayne Gacy's Pogo the Clown costume. The man's body was discovered in this general area. It was hidden by the overgrown weeds, and in a weird twist of fate, Dr. Loomis pulled over to the side of the road right over here to use a payphone. He was calling Haddonfield PD to warn them that Myers was on his way to their sleepy little town, and that if they didn't do something, it'd be their funeral. On Halloween morning, 17-year-old Laurie Strode was asked by her father, the owner of Strode Realty, to drop off a set of keys at the old Myers house. The Myers house had been on the market ever since Myers' parents died in a car crash in 1965, 2 years after Myers murdered his sister. The house was originally built in the 1890s. In 1945, Peter and Edith Myers bought the house shortly before they married. They thought Haddonfield would be a perfect place to raise a family. There are many in Haddonfield who believe the house on Lambkin Avenue is cursed. There have been calls to tear it down, but it still stands in Haddonfield today, waiting for Myers' return. Myers' obsession with Laurie started after she dropped off the keys for her father. Unbeknownst to Laurie, he was standing behind this door watching her. It's crazy to think that he followed her from this moment on throughout the rest of the day. Laurie was a kind-hearted yet introverted 17-year-old attending Haddonfield High with her best friends Annie Brackett and Linda Derclock. Laurie was the complete opposite of her friends. They were outgoing and boy-crazy. Laurie was shy, even bookish, but the three of them got along like sisters. It's changed a bit since Laurie's time here, but it's instantly recognizable. But it was during Laurie's literature class that she caught a man staring at her from across the street. Walking home from school that afternoon, Laurie and her friends spotted a man peering at them from behind these bushes. It's just so eerie, it absolutely gives me the creeps standing here, knowing that one of America's most notorious serial killers stood here, just watching them.
Hey, creep.
And he disappeared off over in this direction. You don't think things like that happen in like a small town like Haddonfield. Just standing here, you really get a sense of how terrified those girls must have been.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
Standing right there. Oh, Laurie. Scared another one away.
When Laurie arrived home from school that afternoon, she spotted a masked man standing in her neighbor's backyard staring up at her.
Oh, kiddo. I thought you outgrew superstition.
By this point, she was becoming increasingly paranoid. So Laurie left home and she waited right here for her friend Annie to pick her up. They were both babysitting at houses across the street from one another. Laurie was babysitting Tommy Doyle and Annie was babysitting Lindsay Wallace. And being the good Girl Scout that Laurie was, she brought a pumpkin along with her so she and Tommy could carve a pumpkin on Halloween. Literally the last thing they do before all hell breaks loose is carve this pumpkin. On the way to their babysitting jobs, Annie and Laurie got stoned in Annie's car. This would later be used against the girls, with some believing they got what was coming to them just because they smoked a little pot.
My dad! Get rid of this!
After they got stoned in Annie's car, they ran into Annie's dad, Sheriff Brackett, standing from Nichols Hardware Store, which is now an Indian restaurant. Sadly, this would be the last time he'd see his daughter alive. Sheriff Brackett was investigating a robbery at the hardware store. It turned out Myers had broken in and stolen a Halloween mask, a rope, and a couple of knives. As darkness fell across the land, Annie and Laurie arrived at their babysitting jobs. Little did either of them know, the Boogey Man was stalking them. A short time later, Annie brought Lindsay Wallace over to the Doyle house in hopes that Laurie would watch Lindsay so that she could go hook up with her boyfriend Paul. Laurie, being the good friend that she was, agreed to watch Lindsay. Annie had parked her car in the Wallace's garage, which proved to be a big mistake because Myers was hiding out in her back seat. He wound up strangling her before slitting her throat. Annie didn't stand a chance. A half hour or so later, Laurie and Annie's friend Linda pulled up to the Wallace house with her boyfriend Bob Sims in his most prized possession, his van. When they realized that they had the Wallace house to themselves, they decided to go up to the master bedroom and have sex. Little did they know, Myers was watching their every move from inside the house. He killed Bob in the kitchen with a butcher knife and Linda in bed with the phone cord.
I saw the boogeyman. I saw him outside.
There was nobody outside.
Having not heard from Annie, Laurie decided to walk over to the Wallace house, and to her horror, she would discover Annie's body sprawled out on the master bed under the tombstone of Judith Myers that Myers had stolen earlier in the day from the Haddonfield cemetery. Terrifying. I mean, could you imagine walking into a bedroom, finding your dead best friend, and get this, Laurie turns around and she discovers Linda and Bob's body stuffed into a closet. How scarring that must have been for her. According to the police report, Myers attacked Laurie in the upstairs hallway. He slashed her arm with a butcher knife and it sent her tumbling over the banister and down the stairs. In the process, she cracked her ankle and she barely made it out the back door. Myers, he was seconds behind her. I've always found this next part so harrowing. So Laurie's running for her life from the Wallace house and she goes over to the neighbor's house and she's banging on the door, begging for help. And the neighbors, yeah, they're home, but they don't come to her aid. Instead, they turn off the porch light. So she runs across the street back over here to the Doyle house and she's banging on the door and banging on the door. And Myers, he's like just feet behind her. But she gets inside, locks the door, sends the kids upstairs, locks them in the master bedroom. But Myers finds his way in through an open window and attacks Laurie in an upstairs closet. She somehow manages to knock him out and gathers up the kids, Lindsay and Tommy, and she's like, go get help, get out of the house. They come running out, screaming. Unlucky for them, Dr. Loomis is walking the neighborhood because he's been spending the night looking for Michael. So he realizes, something's amiss, something's wrong, so he goes in the house just in time to see Michael Myers choking to death Laurie, and he fires 6, or some say 7, shots at Michael Myers, sending him tumbling back and over the balcony. Myers lands right about there in the front lawn, but by the time Loomis makes his way downstairs, Myers is gone. He's disappeared. And to this day, he's never been caught.
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
Myers wasn't the only one to disappear. Laurie would go into hiding soon after the horrific events of that Halloween. Some say she went into the witness protection program and became a headmistress at a posh private school in Northern California. Others say she died locked away in a mental institution. Some say Laurie never left Haddonfield and that she waits for Myers' return so she can kill the boogeyman and end it once and for all. See you at Halloween.
Laurie, what's the boogeyman?
There's no such thing.